So, a personal quirk that you may very well have clocked about me if you've watched my channel for any amount of time is I have a weird relationship when it comes to team books. Mainly, I have a very hard time investing in any of the major team books from Marvel or DC, and I pretty much end up bouncing off all of them eventually. Though obviously that's not to say I don't like any team books. I'm of course a huge fan and booster of Gail Simone's Secret Six. I love the Hellions from Zeb Wells, probably one of my favorite things from the Krakoa era, an era wherein I was reading just about every book, and every book in and of itself was a team book by the very nature of being X-Men. Even that last Birds of Prey run, where the team was a little less static, that actually did manage to hold my attention a lot more than any of these other books I can really name, you know. I think the thing that really ends up turning me off, and the reason that I bounce off team books so frequently, especially the Avengers at Marvel, is this whole all-or-nothing feast or famine approach that every creative team seems to take with these properties. Mainly that we can have no small problems, only the biggest, most powerful, AAA, most movie-adjacent heroes duking it out with the biggest, baddest, most multiversal, all-encompassing, most movie-adjacent foes. And honestly, it just gets tiring to see this over and over again, especially for someone like me who kind of makes his career hoping that he can say something new and interesting, funny, or insightful about comics. When it comes to team books, I just can't hack it. Now, if you're in the know, you'll be aware that Jed MacKay will actually be wrapping up his Avengers run fairly soon, and whenever something like that happens, there's always this nice little air of Christmas about one series coming to an end and a new series starting soon. What will the creative team be? What will the lineup be? And hey, if you listen to the Comic Multiverse, the podcast I do every week with my co-host Matt, I have actually been talking a lot about what I would particularly like to see for the Avengers in this new era, and it is a pretty interesting time for the Avengers as some of their heaviest hitters, their biggest guns, are kind of busy doing other stuff right now. Black Panther is off in space, Captain America is busy with the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. trying to fix what's happening in Latveria behind the scenes, so there's actually a lot of open space for them to actually bring in some heroes who we haven't seen on the team before, or maybe even some heroes we haven't seen in a while. Of course, in my mind, if I had the pen on the book, I would want to see them do something maybe a little similar to what Brian Michael Bendis did with his new Avengers run, and that is, hey, let's actually have some heroes who maybe don't always get the spotlight, heroes who, you know, haven't really worked all that much together before, meaning they potentially have new stuff to say to each other, meaning that we can actually follow up on new dynamics instead of just reheating the old dynamics over and over again. And hey, maybe, even just maybe, we can have an Avengers team that is maybe just a little bit more representative of all the different levels and tiers and biomes of the Marvel Universe, and maybe not say just, oh, I don't know what is particularly big in the movies at the time. I actually started writing this video like a couple weeks ago, and I had this whole big hullabaloo planned about like, hey, I think it's time for Spider-Man to be an Avenger again. Hey, I think people would be really excited to have Wolverine be on the Avengers again. Hey, what about the Invisible Woman? She got such a big push in the brand new movie. She's been an Avenger before. Why shouldn't she be front and center on the Earth's Mightiest Heroes this time? I had all of this ready to go. I had all of this planned, and then literally just a few days ago, Chip Zdarsky announces the brand new Armageddon Avengers as part of his bigger Armageddon event, and oh my god, it is literally the team I had in my mind, minus a few changes, but essentially, I can't do the original video I had planned because Chip Zdarsky already did it. Damn you, you genius, damn you for great minds thinking alike. I do actually really like the makeup of this team. Again, it has a lot of the spirit of what I had in mind. I would have made a couple changes here and there, to be fair. I probably would have subbed out Captain Marvel, who again has been on multiple different versions of the team already, is incredibly powerful. Maybe we can let Carol sit this out for a little bit. If it was up to me, I would probably give that roster to someone like Elsa Bloodstone. Again, everyone's really loving this character now because of Marvel Rivals. It feels like a whole new generation of people are getting interested in the character through that game. And you know, multimedia synergy doesn't always just have to reflect movies and TV. Video games are as big as anything right now, so why shouldn't Elsa get to be on the team? She's a badass monster hunter. She does mostly have the power of gun, and I wonder if Marvel and their parent company Disney are afraid to have someone toting guns on the cover of an Avenger comic moving forward into the future, but that's one sub I would make. Vision is on the team, and that's awesome. I feel like some of the best Vision stories also just so happen to be Avengers story. I would maybe try and future-proof this in this situation. I would maybe say, okay, we'll have Vision, but have him be White Vision, because Vision Quest is coming down the pipeline anyway, so let's maybe get in front of that, or, you know, make that part of the story too. Tell a story wherein Vision ends up becoming White Vision again. Just for simplicity's sake, just for synergy, that's what I would do. Then, of course, there's Iron Man and Captain America. Feels like most Avengers teams either have one or the other. Love the idea of Sam staying on as the main Captain America. I think it really is his time to lead the team, to be front and center, to be out there for everyone to see as the most public-facing team in the Marvel Universe. So he would definitely stay. Iron Man, I'm not too convinced of. Love me some Iron Man. The new book by Joshua Williamson is great, so I could see why they probably want him to be front and center on their biggest team book, but I feel like maybe we could do something different in this situation, and maybe we could give this spot to someone with, you know, similar flavor, but someone who, you know, doesn't always get the spotlight. I feel like a good team book should maybe always try and have a young person on there, like a resident young person. I would maybe give the slot to Riri Ironheart. Again, she just had her show, assuming that Marvel is still interested in, you know, helping to boost this character and keep them relevant, would probably be a good place for her. Or even if you wanted to go crazy, if you wanted to do a total, you know, from left field pitch, what about Tony Ho? Tony Ho I've always really enjoyed. I thought she's a fun character. I love her take on the Iron Man armor that's big and bulky, and it's, you know, this whole, you know, USA type of thing. I think that could actually, you know, look really nice on covers with everything. And plus, you know, she's just kind of an underrated character. She is an Iron person, but she is not directly, or at least as directly related to the whole Iron Man family of characters as Tony and even Riri is. So again, you have the opportunity there to tell different types of stories with her. She's been a USA Avenger, but she's never actually been a mainline Avenger yet. So with that in mind, of course, I'm at a major loss. What the hell is this week's video gonna be about if Chip Zdarsky basically, outside of a few small changes, more or less made the team that I already wanted to make? Well, the answer is I had to really dig deep, had to really get the gears turning in my head, thinking creatively, and, you know, come up with an idea where it's like, okay, if Zdarsky is making the book that I want them to make, then what I need to come up with is the ultimate Avengers book that Marvel would never make. An actual dangerous concept that I don't think they would ever in a million years actually think about putting on shelves. Do I have your attention yet? Okay, good. Of course, when it comes to thinking up new ideas, I always like to regard the past. What worked before, what ideas from comic luminaries can we build on and put our own unique twist on? And for me, one of my favorite Avengers stories, one of my favorite eras in Avengers is really kind of a blink and you'll miss it era, but one that ended up having a massive impact. Of course, I'm talking about 1965 Stan Lee Avengers issue number 17 with the birth of Cap's kooky quartet. Even if you don't know the story, I'm sure you know the image because it is absolutely burned into the minds of a whole generation of Marvel readers. This was the time when Iron Man, Janet Van Dyne, and Hank Pym decided they needed to take a break, they needed to step away from the Avengers, and Cap decided to open up the team to 3 new members, Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, and Hawkeye, who up until that point had been villains. He gave villains a chance to join the biggest, most important Marvel team and to actually give them the opportunity to redeem themselves. And not only did it work, I think it ended up working gangbusters, so much to the point that all of these years later, when you think of those 3 characters that I mentioned, you rarely ever think of their villainous past. You think of them as heroes and Avengers. So my pitch is, what if we could actually take this concept, evolve it, and do it again for a brand new era? Let us try and do a brand new take on Cap's quirky quartet. But of course, what characters would we actually need for this brand new team? What villains do I think are actually worthy of not only redemption, but actually climbing to that next rung of, you know, popularity? I think the story would start with our Cap, and I think it would actually be very nice if we kept Sam Wilson Falcon aboard. Like I said, I like the idea of him being the main Avengers Captain America for the times we live in right now. Free Steve up to do other stuff, and also, you know, Steve already did the kooky quartet thing once before, so no point in recycling the same story again with Steve. It would be fun to see Sam's own personal take on this, especially when we stop and consider that Sam had his own checkered past before it all kind of got retconned away, / Marvel doesn't doesn't like to talk about it anymore, so it would be really interesting to get Sam's own unique point of view when it comes to trying to rehab and, reevaluate a group of former villains. But who are going to be our former villains? Who do I think deserves the spot? I love me some villains, love me some C&D listers. I have thought long and hard on this, so I hope you all appreciate the choices I've come up with. Our first inductee into this kooky quartet for a brand new era. You know her, you love her, I'm kind of obsessed with the character. Of course, I'm talking about Janice Lincoln, the Beetle. Yeah, obviously, of course, I talked a lot about how much I really appreciate this character over in my Modern Villains Who Are Worth a Damn video, and everything I said there goes doubly true here. I love that she's a lawyer. I love that she's Tombstone's daughter. I think her Beetle costume is great. I think she would actually end up filling the Scarlet Witch role in this new team really well, given the fact that Tombstone is her father, much in the same way that Magneto is Wanda's father, well, was her father until a bunch of stuff happened. She is, of course, dating Spider-Man's good friend, Randy Robertson, so she's already kind of had one foot in the hero world, in the side of being good, and I think given the opportunity to be an Avenger, she would really flourish, and if it came time for her to fight her father Tombstone again, I think it would be really interesting to see maybe Tombstone have to up his game and go from just, a New York gang boss to someone who could actually challenge Earth's mightiest heroes, and, heck, she got married to Randy, but then the wedding kind of got blown up because of gang war, and then they tried out making her a more serious villain in gang war, and that really didn't work at all. And if making her a more serious villain didn't work, I think making her a more serious hero would work a lot. And it's kind of fun too to think that the original Beetle was a Thunderbolt, but that this version of Beetle gets to be an Avenger. I think there's a nice little bit of book ending there. Now we need to find our Hawkeye equivalent, and this one might seem like an odd choice, but follow me on this one if you would. I think the Hawkeye stand-in, the kind of Hawkeye equivalent we should have for this new era, should actually be Batroc the Leaper. Yes, that's right, Master of Sevati, Captain America villain who finds himself in a rather interesting position because while he is a Captain America villain, he is a mercenary and not a Nazi, which I think is very important. He is, of course, very funny and very silly, but also shown time and time again to actually be able to hold his own against mainline Avengers themselves. So, why not give Batroc a try? Not only is he competent, but he's funny. You see, Batroc's a funnier character than we've ever had before on the Avengers, and I'm only half joking when I say that. Seriously, so many of these super teams now take themselves so 100% seriously that there's not like a resident comedy character anymore. There's not like a resident comedy relief guy, and I think Batroc could be a perfect comedy relief guy, even if you just wanted to crack wise about the fact where it's like, oh, Hawkeye got to be an Avenger and all he's really good at is shooting a bow and arrow. What does Batroc do? Oh, he kicks people really good and is very French. I think that would be a good pick, especially because I think he would absolutely get on Janice's nerves to no end. So that's a villain who I think would be fun. Then, of course, you would have the dichotomy with him and Sam, because Sam is, of course, a new Captain America, and here is a Captain America foe looking to try and redeem himself. I think there's a lot of good story potential there. Okay, but who's our Quicksilver then? Who's our guy who's really good at one thing and one thing only? This also might seem like a surprising pick. What about Absorbing Man? What about Crusher Creel, everyone? This guy is, a real fixture in all of these big super stories, usually as a member of the Masters of Evil, usually always on the bad guys team, but we have seen time and time again that Crusher is capable of goodness. That Solid and Amid Black Bolt book where they were all locked up in prison together and they had to break up, that was really good. Gamma Flight, the spin-off of Immortal Hulk, actually saw him and his wife Titania join that team, get new costumes. That was a lot of fun. Crusher has always stuck out to me because he's a guy who, even though he commits crimes, I don't think he does it out of malice. I think he does it because he can't do anything else and because he's genuinely really quite dumb. He's the definition of villainous dumb muscle, but imagine if you actually gave him something to strive for. I think it could also be interesting too that maybe it's his wife that makes him want to be a good person. Maybe him and Titania break up. Maybe, they take a break from one another. She starts seeing some good normal guy, and Crusher thinks to himself, man, I really need to reinvent myself. I really need to show that I'm capable of more, that I can be a better guy. And what better way to show you're a better guy than joining the biggest good guy team there is in the Avengers. There's also a ton of storytelling potential with Absorbing Man. The idea has always been that, if Crusher was smart and he could actually remember the stuff he touched without actually needing to touching it, he would be unto a god. He could turn himself into vibranium. He could turn himself into anything he wanted. He just can't remember. Imagine if, he actually started bettering himself and maybe actually started learning from the other guys and girls on his Avengers team. Imagine how high Crusher could potentially soar. Now, in researching this video, too, I did discover that apparently there's an old Brian Michael Bendis story from about 15, 20 years ago where he did apparently state that Crusher is a grapist and actually has a son that was conceived via one of his grapes. That character is named Stonewall, and he has similar powers to Crusher Creel. Obviously, that would probably, make him ineligible to become an Avenger for obvious reasons, but then again, I feel like it's been 20 years and only Bendis seems to remember that story, so we could probably either completely ignore it or maybe make that the backbone of a story by trying to address it to be like, no, that wasn't actually Absorbing Man, that was the Chameleon, or that was a Skrull, or that was something completely different. I feel like you wouldn't want that hanging over a new Avenger. That's, one of those crimes that is truly unforgivable, and I don't think you can be redeemed for that. This, of course, also begs the question, too, if I was to come up with some alternates. Are there some villains out there whose crimes maybe are too severe to ever possibly see them have the option of redemption? My mind actually went to an interesting alternate for Beetle, and that would be Typhoid Mary, the classic Daredevil villain. This lady has a ton of powers, a great look, is awesome with swords, and any crime that she has committed in the past, and admittedly she has committed some pretty heinous murders here and there, could very easily be explained away with, hey, I suffer from mental illness, I have multiple personalities, but thanks to the Avengers A+ healthcare plan, I'm on the good medication now, I'm on the straight and narrow, and I want to keep this way. They also experimented with possibly trying to make Typhoid Mary a good guy. Not even that long ago, in the Krakoa era, she married Wilson Fisk, they moved to the island to try and, avoid any legal ramifications in New York. They got split up, she had a whole side adventure with some ex-women that was pretty cool, and then when her and Fisk came back to New York for gang war, she was still by his side, and then honestly, a lot of nothing. Fisk kind of found religion when he got possessed by a demon, and then I think he just recently got shot up by Punisher. No hide nor hair of Mary, so, she's free. She's free from my crazy idea until inevitably Stephanie Phillips uses her in her brand new Daredevil run starting soon. But yeah, I kind of like the idea of Typhoid Mary on the Avengers. I think they have the opportunity to tell a pretty interesting story about redemption and mental health and, kind of trying to destigmatize the whole thing. If someone like Mary can change, then anyone can change, right? On the same note of mutants with some skeletons in their claws, I was also thinking of Grey Crow of the Marauders. Again, Hellions is like one of the last big team books that I really enjoyed, and that one tried super hard to make him the sort of, Lancer of the team. He had a really nice relationship going with Psylocke, one that actually continued after Krakoa broke up. Of course, he was one of those old X-Men villains who used the blank slate of the island to really try and reinvent himself and to really try and start doing good, even though he kept getting screwed over for it at every turn. He was still working for Sinister, he was still working for the wrong people, and even after Krakoa in, kind of the sequel era, there's a great scene with him, again, actually, Jed McKay wrote this of all things, where Grey Crow has gone back to robbing banks, but he feels really shitty about it, and he's talking to Psylocke about it, and he's like, well, yeah, we're back living in the real world now, we're not living in Krakoa, I have no other skills, I have no other reason for anyone to hire me, a life of crime is basically all I have going for me, and I thought that was so sad and so poignant, and I'm like, man, I would really like to see this guy's redemption journey continue, and maybe that means being an Avenger. Of course, he does have the whole Morlock mutant massacre thing hanging over his head, which is a bit of a problem, but hey, if guys like Gambit and Deadpool and a bunch of these other mutants can, turn things around and really start being beloved. I mean, even Wolverine himself has killed a lot of people, so why can't Grey Crow get the opportunity to try and redeem himself too on the biggest stage of all? Then again, he is another guy, he's a big gun-toting guy, and I don't know if they want a big gun-toting guy on the Avengers. It seems like that's totally cool for the X-Men, if you're Cable or you're Bishop. but maybe not so much for the Avengers. I don't know. I like Grey Crow. I would very much see him as a fun alternate for, like, Hawkeye. I figured, too, any good team worth its salt should probably have a smart guy, and maybe it's because I had just seen the Fantastic Four movie again not that long ago, but my mind went to the Mole Man, you know, one of the oldest Marvel villains we have. Wouldn't it be interesting to see the Mole Man break good and join the Avengers? I mean, we've seen the softer side of him many, many times, and it would be cool to see him basically be the guy in the chair for this brand new kooky quartet. And obviously, you know, he's a guy who suffers a lot from image, and what better way to, you know, rehab your image than by being part of the Avengers. His mole guys could also be used as kind of like, like the technical services for the Avengers. Maybe they move their new base of operations underground to the Kingdom of the Moles. I think that would be pretty cool. It would also be an excuse to update his costume, maybe make him look a little bit more like Paul Walter Hauser. Maybe he suddenly just gets a lot younger. I think that could be kind of fun to have, like, one of the oldest Marvel villains actually end up becoming a new hero. Now, another thing I would really like to do with this book, again, as we continue to pay homage to the original Cap's kooky quartet, is that even though that was the team of 4 when it started, it didn't stay a team of 4 forever, because eventually Hank Pym rejoined the team as Goliath, and it was this big, shocking moment of like, hey, the team is growing bigger, hey, we got one of our old guys back, and he's got a new name and costume. I thought it would be fun to do that again. I don't know if you've paid attention, but Scott Lang, the second Ant-Man, the movie-adjacent Ant-Man, the one who had such a great Nick Spencer run there that I really loved, and I'm shocked they didn't try and build on more at the time. He's been MIA since Secret Empire. They haven't done anything with Scott, even as the new movies have come out and everything, and that's so shocking to me. That blows me away that a character I love so much just kind of fell by the wayside. I believe the last thing they wrote about him, or at least the last thing I remember, he stowed away on a Guardians of the Galaxy ship in hopes of getting kind of a second shot at life, and then we never saw him again. So I thought, hey, you know what? This book would actually be a great way to reintroduce him, because, hey, Scott, much like all these villains who were trying to rehab and who were trying to give the Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, Hawkeye treatment, Scott was a thief once upon a time. He was a criminal, so he could, you know, really relate to what this new team is going for and what they're really trying to do. And I thought, hey, not only should we bring Scott Lang back, but we should actually bring him back as a new Goliath, because I thought that would just be a fun way to pay homage. And, you know, all those ant people, they just keep trading identities back and forth anyway, so why not, right? I think that would be really cool, and I know that is something that would keep me invested in a team book for a long time. Having a team like this, too, means you have a bunch of characters who, as I mentioned, haven't hung out together before. They don't really know each other. They don't really know their skills, their past. So you have an opportunity to actually do real-deal character work, to have conversations with these people that they've never had before. Something that feels fresh and exciting for the reader. Brand new situations. And because they're not going to be the most powerful team on the block, it also means that they need to get more creative and more, nuts and bolts about actually solving the problems that come with being the Avengers. We can't just have them fight Thanos. We just can't have them fight Kang or the Red Skull or any of these major AAA villains. We're going to need to bring it down to earth a little bit. Hey, maybe we should bring back the Serpent Society. We haven't seen them in a very long time. I know Steve Orlando used them for his excellent Avengers Assemble series. I think that would be very cool to have them fight, like another evil group like that. Or hell, even just have them fight a regular new version of the Masters of Evil. It feels like it's been forever since we've actually had just a regular workaday version of the Masters of Evil in an Avengers book. And considering that guys like Absorbing Man already have a history with this sort of team, it all kind of writes itself, right? Where it's like, hey, why are you working for them and not for us? And you could have one of those classic scenarios where it's like, oh, is there a mole inside the team? Is one of these villains more villainous than the others? Again, this writes itself. If it was up to me, I would also want this book to be more episodic, more one-and-done issues. I feel longer story arcs are also kind of suffocating as it stands right now in the world of comics, and that really sucks. I feel like writing a good one-and-done story is kind of this dying art, where more and more readers are looking for the off-ramp, and if it's like, oh, hey, I read that issue and really enjoyed it, guess I don't need to read the other one, that's the whole story right there. I feel like they're so afraid of doing that, which sucks, because I think, there is nothing better than a really damn good one-and-done story that builds, and you start to get the little connective tissues here and there, and then eventually, before you know it, you have this big overarching arc. I wish I had a better way to end this pitch session. I know people in the comments have said that these videos are kind of becoming like one-sided podcasts, and, you know, you're totally right about that. They definitely are. This is where having a co-host really comes in to kind of keep me grounded and to bounce ideas off of. But that is my pitch for an Avengers book that I think could break my streak of bouncing off Avengers books. This is my most dangerous Avengers take. The idea that Marvel would never publish because it means that they would need to actually roll the dice, take some chances on some underrated characters, try and create some new stars, and actually try and do what Marvel used to be the best at, and that is redeeming villains and giving them a second lease on life. I don't know why they won't do it, but if the power was in my hands, I would definitely do it. I hope you like my hypothetical Avengers story, and hey, if there are some Marvel villains out there who you think are kind of on the line of hero and villain, who you think would make a good addition to this new era of the Kooky Quartet, please let me know, and yeah, we'll be back again, everyone, to do it all again next week.